A man was telling a little girl that she should be quiet and not say anything to the police officer who was coming. At this point, a policeman knocks on the door and tells the man to open the door. He then goes to the officer and the officer asks if that girl was there. The man said no and that he lived alone in that house. The officer says he wanted to look at the man's house, but the man said he couldn't do that. He says it was against the law and that he wouldn't let the officer into his house, but the officer said that even though it was against the law, he still wanted to look at his house. Meanwhile, a woman was watching all of this. She says that she knew that this man was very strange and that she now had proof of it. The officer then tells the man that he really needed to use his bathroom because he left the house too early and that he needed to go to the bathroom. The man tells the officer that if he went to a restaurant and asked them, he was sure they would let the officer use their restroom. The man tries to close the door, but the officer stops him and tells him that he really badly needed to use the man's bathroom. The man gives up arguing with the officer and lets him into his house. The officer asks where the man's bathroom was and the man tells him where it was. Meanwhile, the woman was telling her that she needed to do something about it. At this time, the officer was looking for the girl in the bathroom, but he doesn't find her there. He then says that he would find her and then he pulls out his phone and calls to ask for backup. The other person asks what the officer needed and then he says that he needed a warrant to be able to search the man's house, because without that warrant, he would not be able to search the man's house. He says that he would stay in that house as long as he could, as he thought the man was hiding something. The officer then walks up to the man and the man asks if he has finished using the restroom yet. The officer says yes and apologizes for it, but he badly needed to use the bathroom. The man says he didn't need to apologize, then tells the officer to leave, but at this point the officer says he wasn't feeling well. At that moment, the man removes the blanket that was on the couch, but the girl was no longer there. The man then asked why the officer had entered his house and was now making a mess of it. The officer apologizes for this, but the man says he doesn't accept the apology and asks him to leave. He then tries to kick the officer out of his house, but the officer tells him that he needed to treat people with more respect. The man then said that he was treating the officer with a lot of respect, but that the officer was making him very angry. The officer then apologizes for this and says that he was worried about the girl who had disappeared. The man said he had nothing to do with the officer's request, though the officer then asked him to contact him if the man saw anything strange. The man told the officer to leave as he needed to work and the officer was getting in his way, but the officer insists that the man keep his phone number. The officer asks if the man was sure he was telling the truth and the man says yes and asks the officer to leave. He then ends up pushing the officer, but the officer is furious with that and says that the man couldn't push him like that and that he could be arrested for doing that. The man says he could also be arrested for entering his home without his permission, but the officer says the man had let him in to use the bathroom. They then start arguing and at that point the woman goes to them. The man said nothing was happening and asked her to leave, but the officer said they were looking for a missing girl. The woman said she hadn't seen the girl anymore, that she remembered anything. She says that a girl entered the house with a man, but that she didn't know if it was that girl. The man then says that the woman was making it up and that he didn't know of any girl coming into his house, but the woman says that she was telling the truth, that she had seen it. The officer then asks the man again to let him into his house, since he was saying that there was nothing to be found there, but the man said that he would not let that happen, because that woman was crazy. He then asks the man to let me in, but the man says he should go to the woman's house and tries to close the door. The officer stops the man from closing the door and tells him to let him in, as the man says the girl wasn't there. He would have no problem letting him in, but the man says it wouldn't happen and then forces the door to try and close it. At that moment, the girl gets up crying and then she goes to a corner and ends up dropping something on the floor. The officer then manages to enter the man's house and the man tells him to leave, as this was clearly a break-in in which he could be arrested. Because of this, the officer then goes to the man, tells him that he should tell him where the girl was, but the man said that he did not know where the girl was. He doesn't ask if the cop was going to continue with it or if he was going to beat him. The officer said he wasn't going to do it, but that he knew the girl was there. The man said that this was a lie and that the officer could only remain there if he had a warrant. The officer then pulls out his phone again and asks if the warrant had already been issued. The man then said that he could report the officer for breaking into his home. The officer then says that his concern was never his job and that he only cared about finding that little girl who was lost. He then starts looking for the girl in the man's house and the man goes after him. Meanwhile, the woman was wondering if the man could really do that to a girl, as he seemed to be a good person and that she hoped it would all end soon. They go to the man's room and the man tells him that the officer needs to get out of his house as soon as possible or he would end up being arrested for it. The officer then asks if the man really lived alone, since he had found some dolls in his room. The officer asks the man to explain what was happening there and the man says it was a memory of his daughter who had passed away. The officer then became enraged by the situation and told the man where the girl was, but the man said he didn't know where the girl was. At that point, another officer contacts the officer saying that he was in front of the man's house. The officer then tells his friend to enter the house with the warrant. He then asked the man again where the girl was and told him that if he didn't tell her something really bad, it would happen to him. Meanwhile, the woman was wondering if a man could really do that to a girl. She said she knew the man had entered the house with a girl and that she needed to find her. She then starts looking for the girl, but she can't find it and decides to look in the kitchen. She was going to the kitchen, but before she can find the girl and then she starts screaming at the cop saying that she had found her. The girl then tells the woman not to say anything to the officer. The officer then tells the man that he doesn't need his help anymore and then goes to the woman. The girl was very desperate about that situation, but the woman tells her not to worry, because everything would work out. The officer then asks if she was okay, but soon the man arrives telling him to get away from the girl. The officer says that the man would be arrested for kidnapping that girl, but the man says that the officer would also be arrested for breaking into his house. At that moment, another officer arrives and then hands the warrant to the officer. He tries to take the man away, but the girl asks him not to do it, because that was her father. The man then asks the girl if what she was saying was really true. The girl says that she had run away from her mother because her mother never liked her and that she went there of her own free will. The man then says that it was actually his daughter. The officer then asks why the man didn't say anything sooner. The man said he didn't say anything as he didn't want to lose his daughter again. Later, the girl's mother arrives desperately looking for her. She then asks the cops why the man hasn't been arrested yet and she tries to take the girl, but the girl tells her to stay away from her. The officer then tells the girl's mother that she needs to move away as the girl didn't want to go with her. The girl's mother then said she was confused by it and asked them what was going on. The policeman then explains to the girl's mother that the girl went to her father's house because she wanted to stay with her father and her mother wouldn't let her. He says that the girl's mother was not complying with their agreement and that she never let the girl stay with her father. The girl's mother said she wouldn't let her because that man wasn't a good person and the man said that was a lie. So let's take it if some time ago the girl went to her mother asking her to prepare something for her to eat, but the girl's mother says that she needed to get out of there, because she wanted to continue talking to her friend. The man then tells the girl's mother that she went to him because she wanted to be with him. The girl's mother says that the man couldn't throw her for the mistakes she had made in the past, but the man said that was because of her never treating her daughter well. He told her that she was an alcoholic and that, for that reason, they were no longer together. The officer then says that they would need to settle it in front of a judge and then asks the girl who she would want to be with at that moment. The girl chooses to stay with her father, and then another police officer takes the girl's mother away. She tells the man that he would regret doing it. The officer then apologizes to the man for what had happened and leaves. As they leave, the woman says she needed to apologize to the man. She said that she had only done that because she was very worried about what might happen to the girl who had disappeared, but the man said that she didn't need to worry because he would have done the same thing. She then tells him that if he needed someone to take care of the girl when he went to work, he could ask her. The man thanks the woman for what she had done for him, and then she says goodbye to them and leaves. When she leaves, the man tells her that now they would need to resolve the girl's situation with her mother, but that she needn't worry because, despite being an alcoholic, she was a good person. He says that now they could be together forever, and the girl says that she loved her father very much,